big hello to all the viewers who are watching this video. Myself, Dr. Neha Kakkar, BHMS PGDP, homeopathic consultant and psychological counselor based in Meerut, Uttar Pradesh. I've been practicing homeopathy since the past 17 years, and I welcome you all to this part 2 video on Life and Letters of Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. This is a biography written on the life of Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, the great founder of homeopathy, by Dr. Bradford. And in this series of videos, we are looking and talking and discussing about the chronicles of events that occurred in the life of Dr. Hahnemann, and also what all correspondences, what all publications and letters he wrote to his family, his friends, his important acquaintances. He wrote his own observations, his discoveries, his publication in these letters, and we are talking about that, and we are trying to gain practical insights and gain practical knowledge and see what values actually Dr. Hahnemann possessed, and to imbibe those values and knowledge in us and grow as a human being and also as a homeopath. So do watch the part 1 video which before watching this part 2 video, and do watch this video till end to get practical knowledge and practical insights on how to grow your practice, to increase your practice by using those values and knowledge from our great master Dr. Samuel Hahnemann himself. So do watch the video till the end and gain practical insights. Part 1 video, for those people who have not watched it yet, I'm just giving a small gist here. We covered chapters 1 to 7, where we saw that in spite of being born in a very very simple household, having simple parents but great value giving parents who gave him the basic values of life and what made him the man he was. So they were very simple parents. He was born to very simple parents and lived in a very very not lived a lavish life, lived a very simple life, had limited means, and but had the zest or the inquisitiveness or the thirst to gain knowledge, to learn about different things, all of the things. He was a great learner of languages. He knew many languages. So in spite of the trials and tribulations, he had this great thirst of knowledge, and eventually, due to his this inquisitiveness and his hard work, and despite the challenges, he became the doctor of allopathy. He mastered his degree of doctorate. He gained his degree of doctorate and he became an allopathic doctor. Then soon he started to practice. He also started his family. He had a daughter. Then he started moving ahead in life. He practiced in different parts of Germany. So all these things we saw in the part 1 video. We covered in part 1 video. All those who have not watched it, to watch the part 1 video. And now we are moving to this part 2 video, where we will be covering the chapters 8, 9 and 10. Previous video was a bit longer one because there were 7 chapters involved. So now I have made this video a bit short. I am covering only 3 chapters here, 8, 9th and 10th, and we will be seeing what all things we can learn here from life of Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, a great founder of homeopathy. So in chapter 8, moving on to chapter 8 here, he was practicing in a place called Gomen in Germany, where he was not practicing did not have a very very great practice, but he was practicing good, and also he was doing his literary work of translation. As you know, he was a great learner of languages. He knew many languages, and most part of his life he translated many books from German, from English to German, from French to German, from Greek to German. So he was a great translator, and so his part of his living also involved translating a lot of books. So he was doing that work gratefully, and he was practicing also good. But deep down inside, he was gaining dissatisfaction from his medical practice, because he was seeing that his patients were not eventually getting better. They were getting stuck up at some places. Also, when he came into his family life, his children were born, his daughter was born, and later in this chapter we see that his son was also born. So when he started living his family life, he saw his children getting infected with various diseases, but those diseases were just only getting suppressed and not getting fully cured by the allopathic or conventional system of medicine. So he was greatly dissatisfied with this system, this conventional system of allopathy, and that dissatisfaction was growing inside him. So in this chapter we see that growing dissatisfaction coming up in Dr. Hahnemann's life, and due to this he wrote a letter to his great physician friend named Huffland. Huffland was his great friend. He was an allopathic physician, and he wrote a letter to him titled, I'm just naming the name of the chapter, Letter to a Physician of High Standing on the Great Necessity of Regeneration of Medicine. So because of his dissatisfaction with the system of medicine, he wrote this letter to his physician friend named Letter to a Physician of High Standing on the Great Necessity of Regeneration of Medicine. And he mentioned to Huffland that how he was unsatisfied, he was dissatisfied with the current practice, and how we needed a new system, a new way to practice medicine and move ahead. So he mentioned about certain homeopathic provings and certain ideas to him, but later on Huffland initially Huffland ignored the theory he was putting forward to him, the theory of homeopathy, that what exactly new system he is talking about. So initially he was not in accordance with the thoughts of Dr. Hahnemann, but later on in his life he embraced it with great success. He talks about gradual amalgamation of homeopathy with the conventional system. So initially when Dr. Hahnemann wrote to Huffland about his dissatisfaction, he must have dismissed that. The details are not exactly mentioned. We might see them in the further chapters, but here only a specific part is given where he wrote a letter to Dr. Huffland about his growing dissatisfaction and how a new system can help the drowning system of medicine. So Huffland was not initially in accordance with Dr. Hahnemann, but later on in his letters to Dr. Hahnemann he has written that how wonderful homeopathy was and how amalgamation, a conjoined venture we needed of homeopathy and allopathy, and homeopathy needed more specific medicines to become a great system of medicine. This Huffland has mentioned. So this was the initial conversation that happened between Huffland and Dr. Hahnemann, where both the friends discussed homeopathy, and later on in life Huffland was also agreeing on the fact that homeopathy works very nicely and miraculously in many cases. This was a small chapter, chapter 8, where only this conversation happened between Huffland and Dr. Hahnemann. Moving to chapter 9 ahead. So now he was practicing in Goman. He was dissatisfied, and Dr. Hahnemann, due to this satisfaction, was only using certain specific medicines, because exactly what he was dissatisfied with. He was dissatisfied that medicine were acting for only a certain period of time, and they did not cure the patient as a whole. It did not remove the chronic diseases, and the diseases according to the initial diseases, there were also a lot of side effects coming up due to those drugs, and the drugs also aggravated the diseases. They gave initial relief to the patient, but later on they aggravated the diseases and brought on new diseases which added to the already disease. So we see addition of diseases to the already disease which the patient was suffering from. There was an addition of side effects, and the chronic diseases were not getting cured. So this whole picture led him to practice only on the basis of using certain specific medicine whose action he knew, because he was also a great chemist. In the past video, I had told you that Dr. Henneman was a great chemist. He studied the drugs in detail. He used to study chemistry. He knew how the drugs were being made. And now ahead we are seeing that he was the chief drug inspector. The word coined here is Statfistak. Statfistak is a German word for an influential drug officer who inspects drugs again and again, visits the different medical stores to inspect the condition of drugs, what drugs are actually being used. So he was a very very influential person and who knew a lot about the drugs which are being used. So he knew how drugs are being made, and he used to visit them often to inspect them. So after knowing all this, he knew that there was something wrong in the medicines that are being given. The action are not fully known. So he only used certain specific drugs in his practice, and he did not use any combination of drugs. So his practice was slowly becoming limited, and he was slowly leaving the practice and only making his living on the translations. Due to the dissatisfaction he was gaining, he slowly was leaving the practice. He was also a great surgeon. It's mentioned here he was a great surgeon because he treated necrosis of the bone by scraping the bone. So he used to do certain small surgical procedure also himself. So you can see here he was a surgeon, he was a chemist, he was a drug inspector. He had all round knowledge. He was not a layman that who just accidentally discovered homeopathy. He was a man of great knowledge of allopathic drugs also, of surgery also, and of chemistry also. But meanwhile he was practicing, he remembered the teaching of his father, who mentioned to him that not to accept anything in science until proven true by investigation. This was instilled in him by his father, that you must not accept anything in science until it is proven by investigation. So those root values which were given to him by his father was the basis, also formed a basis of his dissatisfaction and way he carried himself as a doctor, and eventually led to discovery of homeopathy. So moving ahead, we see that he started doing a lot of work in translations, and although he was earning very well in Goman and also doing good literary works, he left Goman in 1784 and moved to Dresden in 1789 because Goman was a very small city with limited means. Dresden was a high level city with a lot of cultural and technology, the new sciences coming up there. It was a modern city. Dresden was a modern city. Goman was a very small town where he had limited means, but still he carried on his practice and translations, and whatever learning he took from Goman, he went ahead to Dresden with those learnings. So his dissatisfaction, he moved on to Dresden in 1789. That was a big city in Germany, and he earned majorly by translations. And he literally left his practice there, and also again he continued with his study of chemistry there. He studied a lot of chemistry, made very good medical friends like Dr. Wagner, who made him in charge of his own hospital. Dr. Wagner was a chief superintendent of a hospital there in Dresden, and he was a very good friend of Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. So they become very good friends. He knew J. Christopher, the superintendent of a Japanese library which was there in Dresden. This man was equal to Dr. Hahnemann in knowledge of the languages. He also knew many languages like Dr. Hahnemann. Then he met experimentalist Blumenbach. Blumenbach was a great chemist there. So he met many influential people here in Dresden. So this is chapter 9, where we see a lot of influential people being met by Dr. Hahnemann, and he's doing a lot of translations here, doing a lot of work in chemistry here. So what all works did he do in chemistry here? So I'm mentioning a few important translations which Dr. Hahnemann did here, that were Demake's Art of Manufacturing Vinegar, Detection of Purity, and Adulteration of Drugs. So these were one or two important translations which we do. Now, moving ahead to a major translation, which he did in chemistry, was his ability to identify adulteration of metals in solutions. This was the famous wine test. Wine test was a test established by Dr. Henneman. Previously, a chemist named Wittenberg, discovered a test, wine test, to identify the different metals in any solution. But that test also could not identify iron and lead, the impurity of iron and lead in any soluble, solution of chemistry. So here we are talking about solutions which are adulterated by metals. Already an established test was there, but that test was not enough because it could not ascertain presence of certain metals like iron and lead. So what did Dr. Henneman do here? Dr. Henneman found that acidulated sulfurated hydrogen water precipitates arsenic. Now this is a very complicated chemistry term. I'm just talking to here to mention this, that he found out a certain chemical named acidulated sulfurated hydrogen which precipitates metals like arsenic, lead, mercury, copper, tin and bismuth present in suspected solutions. And later on it became the standard test to test the metals presence used by labs in chemist. So it became the standard test to test metals in different solutions, and also certain journals praised his discovery, his achievement on this. There was a journal named Tromsdorf journal which stated that the ignorance of this test is the sure evidence of incompetence of the chemist or the apothecaries. So many chemists and their journals mentioned and appreciated the endeavors of Dr. Henneman, and here this famous wine test became the standard test to test metals in the solution or any solution which was adulterated with different kind of metals like mercury, arsenic or copper, tin, lead, and specifically lead and iron were able to get hold of this, and worldwide the chemists started using this wine test. So this was about the chapter 9, in which we see that he is growing dissatisfaction with practice, his different translations and the important discovery of wine test. Now moving ahead to chapter 10, that's the last chapter in this video we will be talking about. So in chapter 10, in chapter 9 we saw the discovery of the wine test. Now very other important discoveries in the field of chemistry was made by Dr. Henneman, and we see him as a great chemist and as a great knowledge provider of the chemistry to the world. He gave chemistry in a more evolved form to the chemists around, to the world around, and his tests are still established today. So he was a great chemist, and we should learn that also from him, that how can we have the knowledge of our own drugs, their actions and what exactly they are doing in our human body. So here in Dresden again in chapter 10 we see that he wrote his first original book in 1786, which was named as Poisoning by Arsenic, its Treatment and Judicial Investigation. Now this book opened a new vistas in analysis and detection of arsenic poisoning. Arsenic was a important metal, was a metal which was sold loose at that time. It was, as we all know now, that arsenic is in small quantities, obviously in large quantities is an established poison, but also in small quantities it can cause diseases like cancer. So that time arsenic was sold unregulatedly as arsenic fever powder, and due to this unregulated use of arsenic, there was many symptoms of arsenic poisoning coming up in many cases, which Dr. Henneman observed, and due to this he wrote this book on Poisoning by Arsenic, its Treatment and Judicial Investigation. We needed to have a capping, a limitation on use of arsenic. So he wrote this book, and he advocated that only certain licensed personnel should be authorized to use, to sell, and to purchase the arsenic powder, because it was available so easily and so loosely that we needed to restrict it, and that was advocated by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann after his original book on arsenic poisoning. And after this book was published, new and better methods of analyzing arsenic were introduced in the chemistry labs, and there was a cap introduced on the sale and purchase of arsenic. So this was an important landmark in the life of Dr. Hahnemann, where he is getting recognized for his chemistry work. First, he's introducing the wine test. Second, he's writing a book on arsenic poisoning and regulating the use of arsenic in different diseases, especially in fevers. Next, we see that Dr. Hahnemann wrote an essay to Krell's Annals of Chemistry. It was the first chemistry journal in Germany. He edited on difficulty of preparing the common soda from potash and kitchen salt. We use, as we all know, we use a lot of baking soda in our preparations. We use it in our kitchen, in bakery products it is used. So at that time the soda was prepared from potash and kitchen salt, but here he invented a very good formula to make soda available at a very, very cheaper price. So now he was full on into chemistry, and he introduced a formula to make soda available at a very cheaper price. So this was also an important work. Again, he write different essays. I am going to mention certain essays here. Essay on bile and gallstones, on a new agent on prevention of putrefaction. So he doing a lot of work in his chemistry journals. And now moving on to another important work which he did was his essay on exact mode of preparation of soluble mercury, which was published in 1789. Now, chemists were for a long time searching a preparation of mercury which was less corrosive than the sublimate or the sulfate then used. Now, at that time, mercury was used as a chemical to treat certain diseases, and the chemical which was used of mercury was mercury sublimate or mercury sulfate. Now this mercury sublimate and mercury sulfate had a lot of corrosive property. It was very corrosive. It caused a lot of side effects, and the chemists were searching for a lighter preparation of the mercury at that time. They were searching for a less corrosive form of mercury which causes less side effects, is less corrosive, and gets soluble in acid also. That mercury was not soluble in acid which was used previously, that is mercurious sublimate and mercurious sulfate. So what did Dr. Hahnemann do? He found out mercurius solubilis. Yes, he found out the merc sol which we use in our daily practice to treat ulcers, to treat bone necrosis, to treat certain cancerous affections also. So that merc solubles, the merc sol which we use in practice, was discovered by Dr. Hahnemann because that form of mercury was very much soluble in acids and it was less corrosive. It was almost free from the corrosive properties which the mercurius sublimate or the mercurius sulfate possessed at that time. So here we see what a man Dr. Hahnemann was. He introduced a new mercurius form which is now used as a medicine to treat different ulcers and bone necrosis and other deep-rooted diseases, the syphilitic diseases as we say, the destructive diseases as we say. So he gave the word mercurius solubilis, the merc sol, the soluble form of mercury, which was very much soluble in acids and was very free from corrosive properties. So now this later on leads to another important publication in 1789 which was published in Leipzig. After moving from Gomen to Dresden, then he again moved to Leipzig. So here this discovery was published in 1789 itself, and after moving on to Leipzig in 1789, again Dr. Hahnemann moved to Leipzig, which was the place where he discovered homeopathy. But before discovering homeopathy, he was doing all this work. So he published instructions concerning venereal diseases together with a new mercurial preparation. Here in this book, he mentioned the instruction on the use of mercury, its effects on body in syphilis and mercurial fever. Now, this is a very important writing which is also mentioned in the lesser writings of Dr. Hahnemann. You can also read lesser writings of Hahnemann, and I hope and I wish that I'll be able to make a video on lesser writings of Dr. Simon Hahnemann also. So he, after discovering solubles, the soluble form of mercury, he again published the instructions to use mercury in syphilis and other diseases like mercurial fever. So these two things were also very important, discoveries or the scientific achievements that Dr. Samuel Hahnemann achieved in this chapter 10. So friends, this was part 2 video on life and letters of Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, where we covered the different important translations and important work in chemistry which he discovered, and his growing dissatisfaction in life about the conventional system of medicine. So majorly we see here the chemistry part he is doing, and now coming up to the teaching which we learn from him. So here we see that he was a very, very brave man, because he left his conventional system of practice to pursue his new discoveries. He left his practice in pursuit of the truth. So what can we learn from this quality of his? We tend to overlook in our practice what exactly is the true symptom which we are getting from the patient. We don't see the actual picture, which we see what we have learned, which we are biased about. We tend to see that what medicines we have read, we tend to see those symptoms in the patient, but we tend to overlook what exactly the patient is giving to us. We tend to overlook our own observation and what exactly the patient is trying to convey. Obviously our practice needs a firm basis, and as soon as the patient enters our clinic, our practice starts from there itself. If you have the means to apply cameras in your clinic, you can do that and start observing the patient from then and there, because that sometimes we get those symptoms which the patient might not be telling, but we tend to see and observe it from our clinic corridors and as soon as the patient comes to a clinic. So we need to trust the truth, like Dr. Hahnemann gave importance to his own observation than the learning of the drugs which he learned as an allopath. He had the conviction to follow the truth. Similarly, we also need to have a conviction to see the truth, to observe the real symptoms of the patient, and imbibe that and obtain our remedy or medicine by looking at the exact symptoms or the exact observation which we are gaining from the patient. The second thing we can learn from here is being rooted in life with our values. As we saw that he did not forget the words of a father which said that you should not believe a system until and until you should not believe a scientific system until and unless you have seen it being proved by experimentation. So we should trust our own experience of medicine. Obviously the books act as a reference, but the experience which we gain personally should also be acknowledged and written out. That might be different from what Dr. Hahnemann has mentioned, but most of the time it matches with the prescription that Dr. Hahnemann used to make. But sometimes we also see certain different things coming up. So we should follow the truth, our own experiences also, because every homeopath has a different experience, and every homeopath should take that experience into his or her account and keep that experience with himself, and also publish their own work so that homeopathy can gain from the cases what different homeopaths are prescribing. So the first thing we learn is to follow the truth with conviction and to be rooted in our values, our parents' values and our life values, which help us to be based in truth. And Also, he was a great chemist. We should also learn to be a great knowledger of the chemistry of the drugs which we are practicing. We should know what content the drugs contain, what action they are doing, and what exactly action is being done on the disease and on the body of the patient. So these 3 points which we need to keep in mind. We need to follow the truth with conviction. We need to be rooted in our values, and we need to know the content of our own medicines and drugs so that we can practice homeopathy better. So with these words, I would like to rest my video here. Do like and share this video if you like it, and subscribe my channel Homeo Cure and Care for more content. I do a lot of videos on health, on diseases, on homeopathy, and this my small effort attribute to master Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. Do watch the part 1 video, and do watch this part 2 video, and like and share it, and do subscribe to my channel Homeo Care and Care also. With these words, thank you and have a nice day.